Hello everyone, by the way. I worked, well, okay, so I'm in my 50s. I've been a gardener. I was a gardener for 20 years running my own business, and it became apparent a few years ago that my body wasn't going to be able to cope with gardening for the rest of my days. I started to get repetitive strains, etc., etc. So I had to decide on a new career. I was a governor in my daughter's primary school while she was there. It's in a deprived area of Leeds. I saw the great work the teachers were doing there with the children, and thought, well, I'll go into education. So I left school. I had a poor school experience. Left school at 16. Wasn't interested in education until I went out, just dossed around, then worked and worked and worked. So initially, I essentially had to start with the real sorts of basics, if you like. I enrolled at Leeds City College to become on a teaching assistant course. So I did the level 2 and then the level 3 teaching assistant course. And my tutor at the time, who's a very inspirational woman called Andrea, she suggested to me that I do.
Wow, she's my teacher too.
Pardon?
She's my teacher too.
She was mine too.
Oh, she's such a lovely human being. Like, so she suggested to me that I go and do a foundation degree at the University of Leeds. Now, I can remember at the time that I almost sort of laughed at the thought of going to do a degree in my early 50s, and you know, with the lack of sort of education I had, it just seemed preposterous, really. Anyway, she talked me round. I went to the open day, listened to all the mature students who were there in person, and just sort of in the end thought, well, I might as well, you know, what have I got to lose, really? I'll either do it or I won't. Like, so yeah, enrolled on it, started. I'm now in, I think, Nadine, correct me if I'm wrong, this is my third, and I'm in 3.5 years in now, with a year and a half to do. So yeah, if you talk, so next year from September, October, I'll be actually doing a dissertation, which if you told me that if you said 5 years ago, look, Sean, in 5 years you're going to be doing a dissertation at the University of Leeds, well, you can imagine sort of my reaction would have been. But here I am, sort of thing. And what can I say about where I am now? Yeah, it's hard. There's no getting away from the fact that it's hard, and balancing your life and your work around doing essays and attending lectures, and the sort of when you're working, it's kind of I don't want to put everyone off here. It's constant when you're studying. It's constantly in your head. But I personally get immense amount of satisfaction after completing the work. If you can imagine opening a Word document, putting the title of the essay that you've got to write in, it's a couple of thousand, say 2,000-3,000 words long, and what I get great pleasure out of is actually submitting that, and it's hard to explain, really. That's my work. I've done it. I've gone from no words to 3,000 words, and I've written something that I'm really proud of, and yeah, to submit. Yeah, so What else can I say, really? If you've got any questions, ask me. It is difficult to find the work back. How it works for me, I'm kind of quite lucky. I'm a single person. I'm happily single. I work quite hard, but I find days like if I've got a Sunday that's free, that Sunday's put aside for studying. I'll do it on that day. I'm not very good at studying in the evening after dark. But you always seem to find time, and if you are behind, the support that the university give you with sort of mitigating circumstances, extensions, and just general support, it is amazing. They're really kind of on your side and want you to succeed. So you just kind of find a way. Do you know what I mean? And as I say, I get immense satisfaction out of what I do. And I suppose, lastly, I'm quite worried about actually finishing because I don't know what I'm going to do with the time that I have. And, I can see myself maybe taking a year out, and I can see myself going back and doing something mad like a MA or something like that, So if you're thinking about it, you've got nothing to lose, really, I would say. That's how I would put it.
Fantastic, okay. Sean. That's
right.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I mean, you covered a lot there, and I think the reason you gave for thinking about going to study in the first place was a really common one, that career change, that kind of what I've been doing isn't going to work for me indefinitely. I need to do something else. And I think finding that kind of love of supporting learning through your own children and your involvement in the school is something that a lot of adults can relate to. But I love the distance traveled that you reflect on as well, that you're now kind of producing essays from a blank page to being able to write those however many thousand words, which let's be fair, we're not, no one's asked to do at the beginning. It's very much gradually scaffolded so that you develop those skills all the way through.
Definitely, yeah. It starts from starting off to doing what we call we did the kickstart thing first, which is writing a short essay, and that before you actually start university, and that was just incredibly helpful to learn how to reference and source and things. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that experience, Sean. And yeah, as you say, from not having the best experience of school still to be thriving on a course like this, it'd be great to see you doing your masters one day. You'll have to come and talk to Denise about your plans at post graduation.
Yeah, maybe. All right, so I'll stick around for about another 15-18 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, just pop it in the chat, and then unfortunately I'll have to get off. Okay.
Completely understand. Thank you, Sean. So yeah, we'll hear from Shahang now, and if anyone's got any questions for Sean and Shahang, we should have a few minutes to ask them verbally afterwards, but equally feel free to put them in the chat while they're speaking as well. Over to you, Shahang.
Hi, I'm Shahang. The reason I'm here today is I have a quite long learning journey. Like I stopped my education when I was like 17. I did my high school in Netherlands. When my dad moved to UK, I kind of felt I did not fit in to go back to high school here. I did apply, but then I don't know why. I just moved back to Iraq. There I did apply for a private school. I became teacher there for 2 years, but I felt like I have the knowledge that I need was not in me to be able to teach, even if they were like nurseries. So I did for 2 years, but then I stopped, and then I became mom of 2 boys. At the age of 28, I decided to go back to UK. When I came back to UK in 2018, first thing I did was applying for college. But I had to obviously compare my high school diploma from Netherlands to the UK. So I did it with NARIC. It was compared with 4 GCSEs, and I could apply for level 1 at Leeds City College. I did preparing to work in school. Then I moved to level 2 in Park Lane College, sporting, teaching and learning. Then I did level 3 diploma in sporting, teaching and learning. I did complete those 3 courses in 2 years' time. Then I did apply for Life Learning Center, and I was accepted. I never thought I will be first time when I did apply for student finance. I did apply for Leeds Beckett University because I would never expect seeing myself like being a elite university student, to be very honest. But then Anita like came back to me and said, "Oh, you have applied for the wrong university. You have to do elite university." The first year was very hard. I was thinking I can never make it, but then later, with lots of support of the teachers, obviously, I was able to make it, and I did finish the foundation degree. And currently, I'm doing the top up with Sean. I would say it is hard to have a balance, especially if you're a mom, and be working and studying. So it is hard, but it gives you a lot of confidence. It gives you like more job opportunities, obviously. So I would say go for it if you want to have those opportunities, like to have more confidence, more, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Shahang. That was great. You've brought a bit of a different perspective as well. I think it's really good to hear from someone for whom English is not your first language and you've done your education elsewhere. And I'm sure there'll be other people in the session tonight who can relate to having qualifications from abroad and what they relate to. Loki really wants attention, doesn't he? That cat just wants to get in on the act. And when you say more opportunities, I mean, do you want to tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing now or anything that's changed over the last few years with that?
Obviously, I could be a TA with a level 3, but I didn't feel that I was ready to do that. Like, I didn't feel like I can do it with level 3. But now with level 5, I'm working as a TA, a high level TA, and I'm quite happy, more confident. Just like when I speak, before I couldn't speak in public that much, and now better. One of the reasons here again I'm today in just to break that barrier and be able to speak more like around. So yeah.
That's great. So
and if you have any questions, just ask. Like just Shan said, I'm here till around 7:15 as well. So
that's brilliant, Shahang. Thank you. Nadine, you've got a question. Oh yeah, ideas for your dissertation. That's a good idea.
So if you don't mind, obviously you don't have to, either of you, but I just thought it might be nice because I know you both got really interesting ideas for what you're thinking about doing for next. If you don't mind sharing, otherwise, sorry, I know that's probably a bit much for me to ask, but I just know, you've just got some really fascinating topics that you're wanting to explore.
Yeah.
Well, Nadine, we've only just started talking about this in class. Go on, Shahang, do you want to go first or shall I go first?
It's fine. You go first and I go after you. No worries.
Oh, okay.
If you want, I can go. It's fine.
So I don't know. What am I thinking about doing? Maybe I'm going to ask the question of maybe something that relates to myself. That does. Okay. How do I put it? Does a poor early educational experiences. I could relate this to myself. How I'm not explaining myself very well. How can I? So poor educational experiences and going back to learning. Simply my life really, and going back to education as a later age. I could perhaps sort of maybe fiddle a research question around that of whether maybe somebody who had a really poor learning experience, maybe somebody who's from a disadvantaged background going back into learning as a more mature adult. Yeah, I could ask a question about that really. That's kind of one of the ideas I've got at the moment. I did have another one, but I've forgotten it because Nadine's put me on the spot. But I'll have a little think while Shahang's speaking. I'll see if I can remember what it was.
So yeah, mine will be about the special education needs in Iraq. So my focus will be on that. As we have there are quite few public schools. They have private schools, but they're very expensive. So not everyone can have access to that school. So that will be my focus on special education needs in Iraq.
That's really
Okay.
interesting. So you're both bringing in earlier experiences as well, like the context that you grew up in, Shahang, and then your education experience, Sean.
Yeah. Also, I've remembered what I think. I think the dissertation will come from something that I found interesting, or something you will find interesting throughout the course. So one of the things that has interested me, and I hope this doesn't sound a bit heavy, but when we did a module on educational policy and perspectives, and the perspective that the sort of policy perspective we live under now is like it's like a neoliberal perspective, that and it's all about maths, and it's all about science, and it's all about English, and it's all about that. And there's a distinct lack of creativity within the curriculum now. And I think that goes back to politics, about creating little scientists and making sure Britain gets ahead in the world, etc., etc. So there could be some question I could ask about whether there should be more creativity in the curriculum, and how people who have more artistic flair are maybe getting left behind in these modern day perspectives that we have. Sorry if that was a bit heavy.
I want to read all of these dissertations. And I bet there's lots of people in the room that would agree with you if you have children in school and you kind of see what work they're having to do and what we have to support them with. It's not always easy, is it, to get excited about some of the stuff that gets sent home. And we had a question in the chat about how writing essays. See Ibo, how did you plan writing the essays? I feel like this is my barrier to start at university. Go on, Shahang, I can see you're about to say something.
Yeah, because so go ahead, Sean, it's fine.
No, go on, Shahang, go on. You can go first.
So it is the hardest bit. In my first year, I remember I had literally copy paste everything that I had read, and I didn't reference anything, and I got a grade back of 0 out of 100. So then I didn't understand that bit, that you have to read really like I had never done a piece of academic writing, so it was the first time. I didn't know how to like reference, how to summarize, and all these things. So first essay I did submit was 0 out of 100, and then I said, okay, I'm never going to make it. But then later, after some spark, and then also developing myself, improving myself, I could submit another one, and it was like successful. So it is the hardest bit, actually, especially in the first year, but it might be different for others, because I just literally left high school and then 10-year gap, and then I came back. So it's just like a quite long gap. Yeah, that was for me.
Thanks, Shahang. What about you, Sean? How did you approach it?
It's something that you learn that through the tutors of how to do it. Yeah, and it involves some reading. So the university, with every module that you do, will give you a reading list, especially in the early stages. That you don't your research, your excuse me if I'm wrong, Olivia and Nadine, the reading lists are given to you. You don't actually do that much research. The research that you do personally progresses as you go through the years, as you are getting the hang of what you were doing. Initially, you're giving reading lists of the topic that you're to write about. So it's quite simply you read through. And again, you'll learn how to read. It's not that you read absolutely everything that you're given. You learn how to find the things that you need. And what I was simply doing was you make a note of something interesting or relevant, and that's written down then. So you go on, you read, you go off, you go about your life, you come back, you go do a bit more reading, then you find something else that you think is relevant, and you write that down to memorize it. And then when you're coming to write the essays, go back to your notes, and you have information written down that helps you do it. But it's definitely and the first year, like you said, if you told me that I was going to write a 2,000 word essay with 10 references at the bottom. It would just bring you to go having a laugh. Like, I don't know how to do that. But with the support of the university, you learn how to do that. And it kind of, by the time you get to your 3rd, 4th year, it's kind of second nature, really. You do have to research a lot more and find your own literature. But again, it's kind of second nature now. I wouldn't want it put there for me. I'd like to find it myself. So it's a natural sort of progression, really. And I don't think it's anything to be scared of. It's really interesting, you know.
That's really nice to see the kind of, as you gradually go through the stages, you develop your independence more as a learner. And thanks, Nadine, for putting that information about the chat, about the processes of actually how it is scaffolded, how you're just given stuff to read at the beginning and you're given feedback on your writing. So you're constantly developing, but you're becoming more independent as you're more confident. Our student support officer, Paul, often likens this to going to a piano lesson for the first time and then apologising to the teacher for not already knowing how to play the piano. Like, you wouldn't do that, would you? Because, like, well, no, you're here to learn how to do that. Why would you start a course thinking that you have to know how to be a university student and how to write essays? That's what you're going to learn when you're there. And as Nadine said, so the university has general support for study skills. We have within the libraries, we've got staff who are dedicated to doing skills workshops and information and helping you improve your writing, your reading, your referencing, all those kinds of things. But within the Lifelong Learning Centre, because we have that dedicated specialist centre for mature students who've often been out of education for a long time, we've got a specialist skills support team, including a dyslexia specialist. So if that's an issue for someone, whether they're diagnosed or not, he can kind of meet with you regularly, read through your work, give you feedback. But as Nadine has said, you get a lot of feedback and support from your tutors as well. And we've got questions here from Charity about qualifications you need currently in college. So we'll cover a little bit of this later in the session, but generally a relevant level 3 or equivalent, so something like supporting teaching and learning. But if you haven't already got that, we can book you in for advice and guidance and support, signpost you to where else you could get that. And we're still talking about 5 years and a foundation degree when the students are sharing their experience, but you'll hear from Nadine in a moment that the structure of the program's actually changed. So for this year, it's going to be a 4-year degree. It's not a foundation degree. You're going straight into a BA honours, so you don't finish at one point and then top up. You just go all the way through for 4 years and you get that full BA honours. It's a slightly different structure. And GCSE English and Maths are always really valuable, but if you don't have them, we do have an alternative entry scheme, so that doesn't have to be a barrier, where we can support you to do the Maths and English requirements to get on the course. Are there any more questions or comments that anyone would like to share before we let Sean and Shahang go? Because I know, Sean, you need to go, and Shahang, you're not well, so you need to rest as well as going back to your responsibilities this evening. Yep, so thanks for sharing that, Sean. Not everyone has GCSEs, and that's why we have an alternative entry scheme, because we know that it's not often been possible for people to get GCSE English and Maths. Shahang.
Yeah, I just want to mention I have my GCSE in Netherlands, Dutch as like Dutch, English, Maths, and Science. But when I want to do my teaching course, I have to do a GCSE in English in UK. Does the Life Learning Centre offer that, or is it not?
We don't offer GCSEs, but we work really closely in partnership with lots of providers around Leeds and the region who do, so we can signpost you. And it's a useful bit of information for everyone, really, that if you do decide to do this course as a part-time route to then eventually qualify as a teacher, because you could study for 4 years part-time with us and then go on and do a 1-year postgraduate certificate of education, or one of the placement routes where you're in a school but then you're going to university part-time, then you would need your English and Maths GCSE, and I think Science for that as well. But your first full level 2 in Maths and English is always free. So for anyone who doesn't already have a GCSE English or Maths and wants to get them, they're completely free and they're offered at lots of local colleges. Does that help? Is that all right, Shahang?
Yeah, I did help. Thank you. Thanks.
Good. And Noreen's asked, are placements a part of the degree? So it's not a formalised placement that we organise for you, but we do ask that you're doing some sort of relevant experience, but Nadine's going to say more about that. So I think unless people have got any more questions or anything they'd like to say to Shahang and Sean, I think we should just say a huge thank you to them both, especially when you're not well, Shahang, and you've both had a long day and you've got a lot going on.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much. And again, I asked you really last minute, so thank you so much. I do apologise.
No problem.
Like, guys.
See you all later.
Thank
Brilliant. Thank you.
See you.
Both.
Best of luck
Bye.
next year.
Bye-bye.
Take
Rest
care.
well, Shahang.
Well, that was fantastic. I mean, that's just put the whole session in context for us now, hasn't it? We could just go, but you've got some really useful information. But now we wanted to give you a bit of a feel for how the course is structured and how you learn on it. So I'm going to hand over to Nadine now to give you a bit more information. And as we've said, if questions occur to you as we go along, just feel free to either switch your mic on and speak to us or put them in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you. I feel like Sean and Shan could have just done the whole session. It's like they were just brilliant, weren't they? Right, here we go. Okay, so basically, the student that is on this photograph actually was going to join us today, but because there was work challenges, they couldn't. So you would have had 3 of our students. So yeah, so it's a shame that Vicky couldn't have been here as well, but she was really eager to sort of join the session. So I'm the Deputy Programme Manager. I've worked in the Lifelong Learning Centre for about 12 years now. And yeah, I'm going to go into a bit of my background. Can I just check a little bit? I've got like 7:35 or 7:50. Which one do you want me to sort of aim for in terms of?
Well, 7:30-ish to finish the taster.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
It depends how long the overview bit.
Yeah. And then
But if you can give me like 5-10 minutes at the end, just to let people know about other things that can help them.
Well, just nag me about the time.
I'll just butt in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay, so the focus of today's session is to consider lived experience in a learning and teaching context. I'll explain a bit more about what we mean by lived experience, but essentially it's what we bring from our own life into being a student and into our jobs as well. We're going to look at how lived experience complements sort of formal qualifications in providing inclusive and empathetic support for learners. So I'm hoping by the end of this presentation, you'll start to recognise, because sometimes we have students that start with us who think that they don't bring very much, and we are like, oh my gosh, you bring so much. So it's kind of getting you to recognise what you bring into these spaces and what you're going to bring into space today. And yeah, in consideration of how that lived experience you already have can support your volunteering or employment in a learning and teaching setting. Okay, so when we are working with our learners, obviously, and we can think back to how we were in, primary school, for example, or how you might feel now. We look to those that are sort of educating us, and we can sometimes only see part of who they are. So what I mean by that, so for example, I've got an 18-year-old, and when she was a bit younger, it was like very much, if she saw a teacher in Aldi, she'd be like, oh my gosh, there's like a teacher in Aldi. Like, I was like, yeah, they do live in the real world. They don't just like live at school. So what we're going to do is unpick all these different elements of what we bring when we work in learning and teaching spaces and how that kind of informs our practice. So a lot of the things that people don't see in us, like that you don't know about me today, but you'll know a bit more about me by the end of the session as one sort of example. So when we are working in learning and teaching settings, we've got 2 sides to the practice that we sort of draw upon. on the one side, we have sort of formal training, such as teaching qualifications. We have to work within the sort of like the rules and the policies of wherever it is that we're working with. And obviously we're guided very much with sort of government legislation, so kind of, you know, what we have to do and what we're trained to do. But it's not all about that. What we also bring in is us. We don't separate ourselves. We don't go into, well, literally tonight, you've met my cats as one example. When we go into like a learning and teaching space, we bring ourselves as well, whether that's what's happening that day or yesterday, but it also, we bring past versions of ourselves into our teaching practice, whether we're aware of it or not. And this can also include if we have life experiences of sort of any privilege or oppression, and that's the kind of thing we're going to unpick today about what that can sort of bring within our practice. So it's that kind of like formal training that we can get and formal guidelines, but then there's this lived experiences that we bring, which is very, very informal and kind of people don't necessarily see that or know that about them. So this is like looking at the hidden self. And all I can say is when I first started teaching, which is probably, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think, about 16 years ago, because I used to work in fashion. I had a different job before, which is another story I can bore you with another time. When I first started teaching, I was very much like, oh, I need to be the teacher. And I sort of performed this, what I thought a teacher did. I was teaching BTEC students. And actually, over the years, you know, I'm really working on being as authentic as I can be. So I think there's not a massive difference between me with my students and me at home. Apart from I don't start dancing and singing halfway through a session, but really there's not, you know, I'm very similar to me in my sort of personal life and in my teaching practice. And what I do in my teaching practice, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, is use my past lived experience every day in my practice to really help a lot of students that are from a sort of similar background to me, and also some of the things that I might have felt a bit embarrassed about, or I felt like were kind of not great aspects of me, have ended up being a massive strength. So so that's kind of what I'm going to hopefully unpick today. Lived experience is used a lot increasingly in big organisations like the NHS. So what we mean by this, so when we do research and we collect lived experience, we basically talk to people and we ask them how things have been for them. So kind of like, what's your experience of being at primary school, or what's your experience of being an adult learner? And then people share what that experience is, and we call that lived experience data. So people use it in the NHS, for example. It could be like lived experience of going through a specific type of, say, spinal surgery, and then that locates the person as an expert in what they're talking about. So in the past, when we looked at people for knowledge, it was very much kind of, you know, people that have been to university and professors and all that kind of stuff. And what we're recognizing, you know, what's being more appreciated now is actually our own experiences as human beings is, you know, just as relevant as kind of more formal experience. And what this looks at is, it means that we are expert in that experience. So there's going to be some topics that we're going to talk about today that may resonate with some of you. You know, and sometimes, you know, these past experiences can be then turned around, that we can actually make sort of really positive impact in our work. So just to give you a little bit of an example from my perspective of what I do in my teaching practice that relates to lived experience. So I'm the first in the family to go to university. So my mum left school when she was about 15, didn't finish a GCSE. Well, she didn't do GCSEs then. It was God, I can't even remember what they were. Not O levels. Oh my gosh, what were they? Were they O levels? Just having a bit of a moment. Can't even remember.
O levels or CSEs,
Yeah,
they were,
thank
weren't
you.
they?
And I'm also from a working class background. So I was brought up, my dad left home when I was quite young, and my mom did jobs like she worked in a bar, she worked in a garage, she worked in pound stretchers. So quite a very low income family. I went to, so I passed 11 plus and I went to a grammar school, and I basically just felt like I was with all these posh people, and I just really didn't fit in. I didn't have a great time at secondary school, to be honest with you, and I left there when I was 16. And I also grew up in a situation my dad was at home that was quite traumatic. So, and similarly, I've realised in my 40s that because of my daughter's been going for an ADHD diagnosis, so I've been waiting to have my ADHD diagnosis. So there's all these different things that I've sort of been through. And also my mom has got really, really severe dyslexia. So what this means in my practice is I'm really mindful. So like tonight, when I'm talking to you, I'm already aware that I've used some language that you're going to be like, what is she going on about? So I do apologise. If I say anything you don't know what I'm talking about, you can just ask me later and I'll explain. But I'm really mindful that when we run events such as this, you know, how people can feel, like how it can feel like joining a session online, like just the worry of like getting there on time. And like, what are people going to be like? How are people going to like ask a question directly at me, or all those kind of like unknowns that can make us feel really uncomfortable, especially if we've maybe not had a great experience with education in the past. And so what this does in terms of our practice is we use a really supportive, you know, we call it sort of trauma-informed practice, where we really, you know, think about the emotional element of being a student. It's not just about that. You wouldn't learn if you didn't feel safe with us, if you didn't feel comfortable to go, oh my gosh, I'm not in a great, you know, having a great time at the moment. And we'll be like, it's okay, let's talk about it. Let's, you know, so it's very much about looking at our students in terms of, you know, thinking about, you know, what they might bring into that space and how can we sort of best support them. And so if I hadn't have had this past lived experience, I feel there'd be really gaps in my knowledge, because like my teacher training taught me some stuff, but it certainly didn't teach me about trauma-informed practice. It certainly didn't talk about trauma. So I think there's lots of things that I bring from my past that really do inform my practice. And, you know, I really do appreciate that it gives me that perspective, sort of enriches what I do as a teacher. So what I'm trying to say to you is we're going to be going through this today, but I want you to be thinking, I'm not going to ask anybody to share anything that they don't want to, but you'll be able to think about yourself, like what have you been through that you would think you'd be able to, you know, inform in terms of you working with others. So another example, you know, I've got a daughter and me and her live together on our own. And so I'm really mindful when our students, you know, are lone parents, kind of how challenging that can be, et cetera, et cetera. So the list could sort of go on and on. So thinking about drawing from our own lived experiences and supporting learners, one, it can make us empathetic. So we're all unique. We can't say that just because we've had one experience that everybody else is going to have that same experience, but it can certainly make us use our imagination to think, do you know what? My students might be a bit worried about the financial stuff that's going on, or they might be a bit nervous about X, Y, or Z. So it can make us not make assumption that everyone's going to be feeling okay about stuff, and we can, you know, talk through things and with a kind of really caring, nurturing style of teaching. It also means that we'll be more flexible, because if we've had this lived experience, we are aware that life is not always perfect and things can come up. And actually, Sean touched upon earlier that we have different processes in the Lifelong Learning Centre. So if things come up, like unfortunately something happens to yourself or a member of your family, we have lots of options that can create space and time, so that it's not like you have to hand this in by this date. That's not how we work. It can also really influence the well-being of the students that we support at any age, because they're going to hopefully feel listened to and not belittled. And using sort of a trauma-informed approach. So one of those things can be creating a space where people can feel comfortable to say, do you know what, I don't even actually know what you're talking about, and just feel safe to say that, or like, would you mind repeating that? And just creating that space where people don't feel like they're worried in their head and they can't sort of share it. And it can also make us really draw out our strengths. I mean, I was so proud of Shahang and Sean. They're just two examples of the amazing students that we have. And typically, as teachers, we can see their amazing strengths that they have, but it takes our students time to recognise that in themselves. I just had to sit there and smile when both of them were talking, like Shahang's amazing focus on looking at the Iraq education system, and then Sean just going off on one about neoliberalism, and so I'm pretty sure they haven't even fully grasped how much they've sort of transformed and changed with everything that they've done so far. So examples of what you could bring from your own lived experiences, and we're going to have a bit of an activity in a minute. And again, I'm not going to ask anybody to share anything, but you'll be drawing upon these things in the activity that I'm going to ask you to contribute to. Is these elements here. So it could be different cultures that we've been involved in, our ethnicity and race. It could be the mental health challenges that we may have faced. It could be to do with either members of our family or ourselves that have got special needs or disabilities. So all those kind of different things, or having experienced poverty. These are just some examples of what you guys might be bringing from your lived experience into a learning and teaching context. So thinking about your own lived experiences. So for example, so like for myself, I've shared that actually I had quite a good time at primary school, and secondary school, it is when it all typically, just went wrong for me, really. So I'm just wondering, would anybody feel comfortable to share just one example of what has any of this resonated with any of you? I don't know if anyone would feel comfortable to share. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. If you want to put something in the chat, if somebody wants to put, so Sarah, I don't know if you'd feel comfortable to share what that is. You'll have to put your microphone on. Sorry, your mic.
Sorry. There's quite a few things that resonated with me, especially in regards to sort of how your story started, because it's not mirrored, but there's a lot of similarities. I do come from a working class area. There is a lot of poverty here. I did really well in primary school, and then went to high school. I didn't know that I'm in the process of getting diagnosed for ADHD. So I didn't get the support that I needed then, and I wasn't aware that I needed that sort of support. So there was always the fact that I was really intelligent, but I was too lazy. But I think it was the fact that I just wasn't supported in that situation. And then going on through that, sort of learning more about my own ADHD diagnosis, and there's other factors in regards to like trauma that's happened within my family. They've all sort of been setbacks to me, but I've gone through quite a spiritual journey, and it's brought me to where I am now. So everything that you're saying and everything that I've so far, it's just filling me with excitement, and it's absolutely put every little bit of worry or tension at ease. And even in regards to writing the essays, like, I'm one of these people where I go away and teach myself and learn, and knowing that that's what's involved, I'm like, oh my God, like I will absolutely thrive at doing that. So yeah, I didn't realise how much I was bringing to the table until you guys have pointed that out. So I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. I know it's really hard to find out later in life about ADHD, but better late than never. And we can share challenges and stuff. And I just Google things, so I'll say, like, you know, because I'm such a procrastinator. Lots of
I
stuff.
sidewalk. Look, I do the crab.
But yeah,
sorry
thank
to
you so
interrupt.
much, and I really appreciate having that feedback as well.
Oh, thank you.
And Sabrina, would you mind sharing? You have to put your mic on.
Yeah, hiya.
Hi.
I could pretty much relate to what you were saying, and as well as the lady who's just spoken. Sorry. Yeah, I was bullied in my childhood and my school time. I didn't have a really easy life at home either. And where I'm stood today, I don't think it's quite easy, but I'm wanting to find my feet. So it's just about knowing myself again after the whole lifestyle we go through. I mean, I'm 45 now with teenage boys, so it's just I'm actually appreciating what I'm hearing today. It's helped me everywhere, and when it comes to writing, I panic, but it's like you say, about learning again, and that's what I think I'm wanting to do. Learn to live, learn to study, learn to actually feel good about myself in some way.
Brilliant. Yeah. I know. Thank you. And I'm really sorry to hear you went through that. Just to say, we had a student do an amazing dissertation. So what they were talking about earlier, which was obviously like right at the end of the program, but it was about bullying, and actually so she reflected on what she'd been through, and then she went on to do an MA. Now she's going on to do a PhD, and now she's doing amazing work, which is very much.
It was just not bullying my childhood, it was bullying at home, and then I grew up in a marriage that was pretty much worse off, and then my children, even growing up, it's been a difficult journey. But back to the point, it's about just finding me again throughout the ongoings.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. It's been inspiring with the stories today.
Oh, and you're here, and thank you so much for sharing as well. And yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we better get on to the activity, otherwise we're not. So first of all, so this is example number 1. So basically I'm going to talk you through a real life situation, and I'm going to get you to sort of reflect on it. So example 1, a school. So you've got to imagine there's a school and they're creating a school uniform policy. And we're going to think about how could you, if the school had asked you, let's pretend you're working there, ask you to think about how would your lived experience inform the school policy. So I'm going to give you 3 actual real things that have happened in the UK. So first of all, here's an example of in Suffolk in July 2023. There was really hot weather, and basically the boys were not allowed to wear skirts. So there was this challenge about gendered uniforms. So girls could wear skirts when it's really, really hot, and the boys couldn't. So they all went to school wearing skirts. In Glasgow, again, July 2023, this school, St Luke's School, introduced a black tartan skirt for all year groups, which was £22. You couldn't just get it from the supermarket, and you had to buy this very specific tartan. So there's another one. And then actually there's another one I found out today that relates exactly to this. This girl had gone to school in a skirt, and just because it was a little bit short, she was like sent home, made to feel really humiliated, just because the skirt was a tiny bit too short of what the school policy is. And then lastly, another example is how students can be othered because of their hair, and very sort of Western, I would argue quite racist policies in terms of what hair is acceptable and isn't acceptable and who makes that decision. So this is an example of a girl who went to school with braids, and she was banned from the playground because of having a natural hairstyle from her heritage and culture. So thinking about those things, or just any of the things, so thinking about sort of like policies to do with hair, thinking about school uniform and cost, thinking about, would you send a child home if their skirt was 0.5 centimetre too short? You know, what would you bring to the table if we were having a chat about what we're going to do with our school uniform policy? And there might be something about your own lived experiences that you don't have to share, but that might help you inform what the school could do differently about their school policy. So, and what I mean by that is just thinking about what sort of rules could we have. So if we've got a school uniform and the skirt's £22, what might we change about that? Or if we have a policy that's about certain hairstyles aren't allowed, what could we change about that? So I'm going to shut up and leave it to anybody that wants to contribute. You could either put it in the chat, or if you want to put your mic on. Sabrina?
Yeah, personally, in my days, I went to an all-girls school. And I was not allowed to wear skirt or trousers. But in them days, it was accepted that as long as it were all black, it can be in our cultural way.
Ah.
So I was allowed to wear a dress or something as long as it was safe and black. But today, it's like everything they have to wear, like my boys. Although even on hot days when they have to wear PE kit, the PE kit's black. So it don't make sense to me the way it works, and the price itself, it's an arm and a leg, but we have no choice but to get the branded clothes that they have provided. Again, the quality is crap as well.
So what would you change? If you could make a change, what change would it be? Like one change?
They would have to allow something that doesn't have to come with a logo all the time, I guess.
Yeah, unbranded. Yeah, totally agree.
Because it's the brand that we're paying for, but the quality is unacceptable. You know, the blazers are torn, and that costs us like 50 odd quid, and it's just wow.
Yeah, and
because in primary school they had this thing that we can buy it from us cheaper, but I don't know how the high school works.
I mean, sorry.
Yeah, that's it, really. Yeah.
I was just going to say, they have like PE kits and they've got the branding on the top, the bottoms and everything. It's like, how much branding do they need? Like, surely just like one badge would be enough. Thank you so much for your reflections. Really, really important points. Has anybody else got anything that they would add to a school uniform policy, like what you changed?
In my school, the PTA subsidize most of the things the school requires. Like, for instance, the uniform. We have a day that we call out for donations for uniforms. So then we select the good ones out of it, and parents who can't afford the school uniforms or can't buy from the shop, they can just pick up some for free.
That's
so
good.
That is one thing we do. And then the PTA as well, we organize summer fairs and we get coins and those things, which we use to subsidize or pay for half of some of the expenses the school or the parents for trips and other things that the students will be engaged in. So that really helps the parents as well. So instead of maybe paying £22, the PTA will pay half of it and parents will pay half of it to get the uniforms.
That's brilliant, and it's a really good example of recycling older uniforms as well. No, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And Sarah?
Sorry, mine pretty much mirrored the same, but I'd already pressed the button before
That's
I could.
fine.
But it's exactly the same. Like, get them to subsidise it or make it unbranded, all the above, really. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, brilliant. And we've got have the badge to be sewn on, taken off, put onto the next t-shirt or Velcro. I'd suggest if it's black, any black. PTA organise events to share. Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay. So the next one we've got, this is a different focus now. So I need you to use your imagination. So you're in a learning and teaching setting, you're in a school, a child's just come in and they're late. And not only are they late, they're very quiet and subdued. So normally this is a child that's really outgoing. So we need to think about what the issue could be. And I mean, I've got this in pairs, but we'll just sort of do this in a group. So again, I want you to think like, what would you do? Like, what do you think the needs are of that learner? And have you got any ideas of what you could do to support that child? So this child is coming late, they're really quiet and subdued, and you're like the first adult that they're going to speak to. What would you do? Yeah, Sarah.
I mean, personally, I'm quite not soft, but I'm really soft and I pick up on people's energies. So I'd just probably stick with them for a little bit longer and just ask if they're okay, and like sort of go on their cues to see, you know, initially how they feel, whether they're wanting to open up, is everything okay at home, are they getting on with the friends okay, and I'd probably just take their lead from there and maybe get their feedback, and then obviously take the appropriate action that I need to help make them feel supported.
That's brilliant. So child's led, so listening to the child, using your empathy. So you sound like you're an empath, sort of in tune with people's emotions, and drawing on that. So that's a skill that you're bringing into a learning teaching. You know, you've got that awareness. You're not just going to tell them off like, why are you late?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
I'll also welcome the child with a smile. And as in our school, we normally ask them, what zone are you? So from the zone he would say or she would say, you have an idea what is really wrong with the child. So you welcome the child with a smile to calm him or her down. You ask him the zone he is in the morning to give you a clue about what happened. And you can, if it is feeling reluctant to talk to you, there is a calm corner you can take her to go and relax for some time with a timer, and then she will get over it, or she will tell you something that happened in the house or something.
Thank you so much. And that's it, isn't it? It's kind of like how we respond before, because we know the non-verbal communication that we have is more than the verbal. So if we are responding, you know, with a smile and welcoming, that's already telling the child that we're not going to tell them off. And I'm just looking in the chat as well. We've got make them feel welcome, chat and relax about general things. So if they've eaten, safeguarding. Yes, so some children come to school, they might not have had any food maybe the night before or that morning. And safeguarding to make sure that they feel safe. And we've got another one. Kirsten just put something in relation to the uniform. Well, one before, shoes not to be specific colour, as some parents can afford to. Yeah, gosh, when you've got to have like loads of different pairs of shoes as well. Yeah, absolutely. So so thank you so much. So that's really thinking about making sure the needs of that child would be met. I'm really mindful that we're already dashing along with time, so I'm going to start talking about. So thank you, first of all, very much for your contributions. They were brilliant, and it's really great to hear that you would use trauma-informed practices in what you've just shared in thinking about a school policy, and also how you would support a child that was running late for school, which is really, really lovely to hear. So just to say that in our teaching, we teach in small groups, there's flat tables, and we're constantly drawing on our students' lived experiences. We're always going like, and what's this like for you? Like, and quite often they're talking about their children as well. Nobody has to share anything they don't want to share, obviously. But we're constantly thinking about, you know, this is what they say in the books. Is that right? Is that your experience? And it's fascinating. And nearly every session I do with our students, I learn something new about their practice, because obviously students are working in all different sort of learning and teaching settings with very, very young children to adults. So we've got a lot of variety in where our students are working. And so our students are I'm struggling to think of a session where they don't talk about their lived experience in one way or another. So again, our students learn from each other as much as they are learning from us, and we learn from our students too. So it's a big sort of learning activity from one another. Okay, so now I'm going to focus on what we do on our program. So it's going to be quite a bit of information. So do feel free to put anything in the chat. If I say anything you don't know what I'm talking about, please do let me know. And yeah, so obviously we'll have lots of time for sort of questions as well. So so now Olivia's just mentioned that we are now a 4-year BA Learning and Teaching with SEND. So when you join us, so unlike Sean and Shahang that were earlier, they came on a foundation degree and then they, after 3 years, applied to do a top-up. We don't have that format anymore. So you'd be coming straight in on a BA Learning and Teaching. So it's a year quicker and you're already on that BA programme. It's specifically designed for anybody supporting any learners in any different type of educational setting. So that could be in a community, it could be in a prison, it could be a more formal education spaces, any sort of spaces. We've had people working at Brownies as well, and all sorts of different spaces where learning can sort of take place. The whole programme is rooted in professional practice. So everything we do, it's about, well, what is that like where you are working? So it's kind of like, this is the theory, this is what the books say, what is that like in your practice? And we've got lots of assessments where students create things or write things that are directly related to where they work. So there's a very, very strong link between work placements or working in a learning and teaching setting and the learning that we do on the module. We have, because of obviously the title of the programme, we've got a number of special education needs and disability modules. But as students go through the programme, you can sort of pick and tailor the degree to suit you. So not our students don't all do the same experience. So kind of like some might do more SEND modules, some might do less. So it very much becomes sort of tailored to what your area of interest. It's taught 4 hours a week on campus, so it's 1 till 5 hours a week, and the days change depending on where you are in the programme. So Tuesdays we get our new students in, which are year 1, then on Wednesdays it's our year 2, and then on Thursdays it's our years 3 and 4. So that's one thing that would sort of change, that just the afternoon, but you're still doing that time slot, that doesn't change. We have what's called 2 semesters. So basically our teaching quite often starts late September, sometimes nearly in the beginning of October, and it goes right through to a week or so before Christmas. So that's our first semester, what was called a semester. So that's a chunk of 10 weeks of teaching. When the schools are shut in Leeds, we don't teach. So we call it a reading week. So if you're already thinking, oh, if I was on the programme and my kids, if you've got children and they're going to be off school, you wouldn't be on campus that week. So there would be no teaching on campus. So yeah, and it's the same after Christmas, sort of late January to May. We have another block of 10 weeks, which is called another semester. Now that's quite broken up because we come, so for example, students have come back for a couple of weeks, then already next week we've got it, students aren't in because the schools are shut. Then they come back, and then obviously Easter. Oh, hi, we've got somebody else joining us. Hello. And then students aren't here for another month. And then they come back, and then they have about another 3 weeks, and then that's it. So it's very much split into sort of 3 sections in semester 2, which is actually quite nice for students because they kind of like do some learning, then they have some space to read and write, do some more learning. So it's not just 10 weeks in one block, which I think would be a bit overwhelming. So the programme itself is over 4 years, which sounds like a long time, but I can tell you, a bit like what Sean was talking about already, it goes so quickly that once students get into like the years 3 and 4, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm already thinking about it's going to end and what am I going to do next? So and I was also a mature part-time student for about 13 years. So I did 3 different qualifications. And actually, I think most of us that teach in the programme have been mature part-time students. So again, we've got our own lived experience of what that's like. So when our students are sort of saying, oh my gosh, the washing machine's broken and this has happened and that, and I'm like, yeah, we know, been there as a mature student as well, and we know the sort of challenges. So, you know, we sort of bring that in our practice as well. As I said, sometimes our students think that they're going to be like 1 in 300 people in a lecture theatre, and we're just going to talk at you. That isn't what happens. We're in very small groups of like, say, 15, 20 students, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less, flat tables. You sit in groups and we have discussions and quite often laughter. So it's very much like we might do 15 minutes of talking through something, and then it'd be like, right, over to you guys, give you an activity for like 20 minutes, and then you'd feedback, and then we'll do a bit more formal input. So it's kind of like chunked into, we don't just talk at you for 2 hours. The entry requirements, now this is just to give you a bit of a flavour. There might be some people here that don't fit in this, but obviously we've got guidance as well, so please do not worry. So typically it would be having the GCSE Maths or English at grade C or 4 or above, and also T-levels, but on a case-by-case basis. There's also sort of level 3, as Olivia touched on before, such as a CASH, diploma in supporting teaching and learning. And we do need you to do a minimum of 60 hours a year, because we've told you already that the assessments are very much linked to what you're doing in practice, but we've got people that start who haven't had this set up. You just need to have it by the time we start in sort of September. And it's 60 hours for the whole year. And that can be, as I said, there's lots of different, you know, some people do some voluntary work in a school. We've had people, be in the brownies and stuff. So there's lots of different things that could be in. So, and obviously we can sort of talk to you about that if you've got absolutely no idea. But quite often some of our students approach the school that if they've got children that their own children are in, and they can start like that. And then as students are on the programme, because we've got a number of students that are in all different kinds of learning and teaching settings, jobs come up and people get to hear about things, and it kind of quite organically changes. So it's quite interesting to see when people start to where they leave. They're generally in very different circumstances in terms of their work. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because I'm very aware of the time and I want you to have time for sort of questions as well. But just to give you a bit of a flavour, these are sort of the year 1 modules. So we've got an academic skills module. We've got a module that's about theory, about how do we learn. We've got a module about sort of typical child development and atypical child development. And then we've got one that's focused on SEND, so special education needs and disability. Then going up to the year 2, these are core modules. So these are modules that you have to do. There's one that's about developing your teaching practice, and there's another looking at education policy and different perspectives. Then again, core modules that you have to do in level 3, understanding educational research, looking at the curriculum and assessment, and looking at sort of professional practice. And then 4, we've got research and learn. So basically, it's more about how to do research in education. And this is preparing you to do your own longer project that we've talked about and looking at contemporary issues. And then finally, the long essay, the dissertation that it's called, which is a bit like 3 smaller essays sort of together, which are about 3,000 words each, 3,500. And it's kind of like 3 different bits that then come together to make this longer, big project. We've also got some optional modules that people can choose from. So things like coaching and mentoring, dyslexia, autism, using stories, so really creative modules as well, counselling skills, looking at learning identities, which looks a lot at lived experience and sort of biographies, and students have been putting photos and music in and all sorts in that kind of module as well. We are a practice-based programme. So what that means is we're very much looking to the theory. So we are looking to what people have written about and what people argue happens in a book or in an article. But we're very much connecting to like, what is this in practice? What does this look like in the real world? It's all very well saying that this will happen if you do A, B, and C. But in reality, you know, is there the resources to support that? Are learners able and comfortable to do that, and all that kind of critical lens that we sort of go through in terms of that. Again, this isn't giving you a whole overview, but it's just to give you a little bit of a flavour of some of the things that our students have gone on to do. So it's always brilliant to see our students shift and change with the jobs that they do. You know, we really celebrate the different roles that students take on, and we've got an amazing career advisor who offers like support with interview techniques and things. So, you know, students gone to get like higher level TA, do Senkos. They've gone on to get leadership positions. They've gone on to be very specialised in terms of sort of, again, trauma-informed practices. We've got increasingly students that have gone on to do PGCEs, have gone on to do master's degrees and PhDs. And these are students that told me at the beginning that they couldn't write 500 words, and they've gone on to do postgrad study. And, you know, because they've just transformed in how they see it, very much like how Shahang and Sean have talked about, which is just, you know, really, really lovely to see. This is some about not everybody, because we've got a wider cohort of staff, but these are sort of the core staff that we have on the programme. So Anita is the programme manager. I'm the deputy. We've got Sally, who's been with us for such a long time and is just amazing part-time tutor. And Sam recently joined us a couple of years ago and is another amazing part-time tutor, also obsessed with cats. Sally's obsessed with dogs, just to bring the animal back in. So, sorry, I feel like I've just gone a bit quick through those, but I just really wanted you to have time to ask questions, because I know you'll all have loads of questions. So over to you. Anything, and please don't think, oh, I don't ask that, because that's probably a really stupid question, because that's kind of how I would have been as a learner. And generally speaking, there'll be someone else that's sat there thinking, oh, I don't ask that question because it's a really stupid question. So you just ask away.
No such thing as a silly question.
No.
Feel free to just unmute or put questions in the chat or put your hand up, whatever suits you.
Hi.
Hi.
Cassie, yeah.
Hello. Sorry about my kids then.
Don't apologise.
I thought I read that it could be one evening a week. Is it always one afternoon?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have two part-time programs that are very similar, and the one that we ran a taster for last Thursday evening is the Child and Family Studies degree, which is also taught part-time, and that used to have the same model as this, but because a lot of the people on that are in settings where their employers couldn't release them for an afternoon a week, there's an option of doing either a lunchtime 2-hour session or an evening 2-hour session, and then the other 2 hours is delivered flexibly, where you've got something to work through in your own time, a video and some content. So it's a slightly different model. But if it's an issue with workplaces being released for an afternoon, we can often speak to your setting, because depending on where you're working, if it's a school, I mean, it looks really good for Ofsted inspections that staff are qualified to as high a level as possible. So sometimes heads or kind of managers need a little bit of persuading of the value of doing a qualification like this, but there's so much testimonials from students and graduates of how it's really benefited their practice. So we can kind of support you with that.
Yeah. Also, just whilst I'm on, when you ran through the requirements, all three of those things are what you have to go on to do this foundation degree, because I've done the work side and I've got the GCSE side, but I haven't got the so I haven't got a level 3 diploma or relevant. So would I have to go do that first to then be able to go on to do this?
Well, there is a possibility, if you have the capacity to, if you're able to fit it in, of starting a level 3 now that you could complete by the summer, if you live in Leeds, because Leeds City College offer the supporting teaching and learning or early years practitioners level 2 and 3 programs part-time, 1 class a week, and they do them twice a year, so you can either start sort of September, October time or around February. They do them quite quickly, so we can give you information about how to get onto that.
Yeah. Okay. Right, yeah.
And then I think where people, I mean, we would always recommend that people do a level 3 if they can, because it's going to give you that recent study at the right level to be able to progress and introduce you to a lot of the concepts and the policies and things that you'll be learning more about on the programme. If it really isn't possible, then I think there is an alternative entry essay, Nadine, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, so we do look at it like case by case and think about what experience have you had so far. So just ask, get a guidance appointment, and so don't just think, oh, I can't do it, and walk away. Just explore all the different options, and obviously we'll do our best to support you through that process. So it's very individual. It kind of leads like a one-to-one private conversation, really, just to like get an understanding of where you're at and what you've done and everything. I've just noticed Ruth has put something in about, I have a degree abroad, but I don't know if I still need GCSEs to get into this program. So if you already have a degree,
we'd need to check what it's equivalent to in the UK. So it will depend where you did that degree, Ruth, what language it was taught in, and whether it was a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. So if you're able to give us that information, maybe in the either now or in the chat or in the context of a guidance appointment, we can kind of give you a bit of a sense of whether it's equivalent to a UK degree or not. And if you haven't already done it, I know Shahang mentioned NARIC, that organisation that recognises overseas qualifications and their equivalencies in the UK. I think it's now called ENIC, ENIC. I'll put a link to it in the chat. But if you haven't already been to them, that can be useful. Although there is a fee, they will then send you a transcript of what your overseas qualifications are equivalent to in the UK, and that then determines whether you're eligible for funding for higher education in the UK. Because generally, if you have a UK degree or the equivalent to that, what's seen as equivalent in the UK, you're not usually eligible to do a second degree, but there are some exceptions, so we can advise you about that. But we've got a couple more questions, and then I'll talk about the guidance service, because that might be useful for a lot of you. So Sabina, did you put your hand up first?
Yeah.
It's just a simple question, sorry. It's just about, whatever course you do, when the school holidays start, does that apply to every course that we're doing, like Jumpstart and the rest?
No, Jumpstart is rare that it does continue through the half terms, just on the Wednesday evening, 2 hours a week, just because they would struggle to get it in before the Easter holidays otherwise. But most of our degrees and preparation programs that have been designed for mature students, they generally stop for half terms, and always for Easter holidays, Christmas holidays. And as Nadine was saying, you finish long before the children do. When it comes to summer, you finish by sort of mid-May.
So basically, Jumpstart is straight ongoing.
It does. It's 8 weeks from this week right through half term, and then it stops before Easter.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Sabina. Sarah, did you have a question?
I think I might have already done. Is the guidance service the one-to-one that I had?
So you had a chat with me on the phone about Jumpstart. Have you also spoken to Denise or Mohammed? I can't remember now.
I think I might have spoke to Denise, yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably it. But if you've already spoken to Denise, you've had your guidance appointment. But sometimes people go and have that initial chat, and it's kind of, I really don't know what I could do, give me some ideas. And then you go away and do some research, come to a few sessions like this, and then you think, right, I know what I want to do now. How do I get there? Go back and have another appointment, and she can guide you.
Oh no, the one-to-one, I just wanted to say, if anybody's thinking about doing it, like, I'd strongly recommend doing it, because every mental hurdle I had in my head, as soon as I spoke to that, I was like, let's look at what you can do. They sent me an email with everything that's available, the routes, the options, and honestly, the support that I got was amazing. So if anybody's thinking about doing it, please do it, because it'll just put your mind at ease.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice.
What a lovely endorsement. We'll have to pass that on to Denise. She'll be delighted.
I did send an email saying thank you, thanks for all the support you've given me, because I think sometimes our own biggest battles are in our minds. And I think as soon as somebody lays that out to you, and the support that I've been given, even up until this process, it's honestly been amazing. And I can't thank you guys enough.
Oh, thank
It's really
you.
good to know.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Sarah.
much.
I mean, that's what we're there for. We're not saying that everyone has to come and do this course, or everyone has to go to Leeds University, or even everyone has to go to university. We just don't want people to rule themselves out because they don't have all the information. We don't want people to think, oh no, I couldn't do it because I wasn't great at school, or I wouldn't be able to afford it. We want you to have the information to make an informed decision about whether it's for you or not.
So Noreen's put what would be considered relevant experience for the 60 hours requirement. So as long as it's a learning and teaching setting, so a lot of our students volunteer in a school, or we've had people work in colleges. You know, it basically has anything that's to do with learning and teaching in any sort of context is absolutely fine. So it could even be in a community. So again, if you're not sure, just ask us.
Some people are volunteering in kind of supplementary schools or through their community on a Saturday or after school, or maybe helping other people learn English.
Yeah, and that's 60 years for the whole year. So you've got the whole year to spread that 60 years over. The route to apply onto the course. So we don't go through UCAS. It's like a direct application. So we would give you the application form, which is still a paper copy, isn't it, Olivia? The application, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're quite old school. I'll put the link in the email in the chat. But if you click on the link I put in earlier, that takes you to the course pages, and all the details there are there if you want to apply.
Oh, and then we've got another shout out for Denise. It's a shame she's not here. Sabina, have you got something else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just saying I was actually grateful it's all on paper, because I went for advice thing, and I'm actually grateful it's all on paper. I couldn't do internet. It's hard enough managing what I'm doing so far. But thank you. If it helps.
Thanks, Sabina. I was in a meeting literally this week talking about how our students use technology and the devices that they sometimes don't have. So we're very aware that, you know, not everybody comes feeling confident about using technology or even has access to a laptop at home. So we're very, very mindful of that in our practice. So, yeah.
Nadine, do you want to stop sharing, and I'll just put my last few slides up, because I've got future events and a couple other things to just let people know about. But feel free, everyone, to keep asking questions while I just do this bit, or I can't remember how to do it. Yeah, either put questions in the chat or ask us. There's one there which I can't read at the moment. Nadine, do you want to pick up the question that's in the chat before?
I'll just answer it now by text. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So we'll send you the contact details for Denise after this session. So if any of you want to arrange an appointment with Denise, we'll give you those contact details.
Well, actually, as well, it's on this slide. So that's the lovely Denise that everyone's been name checking, and that's Mohammed just below her. So yeah, after tonight, in the next couple of days, you'll get an email that will have the slides, the recording, and then information about how to book an appointment with Denise or Mohammed, which can happen over the phone. It can happen online on Teams like this, or you can come in and see. Certainly, Mohammed, you can see face to face at the moment, and that's about exploring all of your options. So you can say, I came to this session, I'm interested in this course, but what else could I be doing? Is this right for me? And they'll help you kind of work that out. You can talk to them about careers, you can talk to them about finance, and if the more that you can kind of share about your specific situation, the more they can guide you. And it's completely impartial, so they're not trying to kind of sell you anything. So yeah, all the details of how to book an appointment will be in that email, but it's also there. And then I'm not going to say a lot about student finance, because we will let you know about a session that we've got coming up later in the month with my colleagues John and Paul, who are absolute experts in this, and they'll go into a lot more detail. But the general rule of thumb is you don't have to pay up front for higher education. As long as you're eligible, you get a loan from the government to pay your tuition fees and your living costs. So some maintenance money, and the rule of thumb is that the lower your income, the more financial support you can get, both from your government loan and also from the university itself. Each individual university will have its own financial support package, and a lot of that is in the form of grants, so you don't have to pay that back. And you don't need to start paying anything back until you're earning over £25,000 a year. When you're earning that, when you're earning £26,000 a year, you're paying back about £90 a year, so about £7.50 a month. So they're very low, affordable repayments that come out of your wage at source with your tax, your national insurance, so they don't affect your credit rating or anything like that. You can't get into arrears. And then there's additional support, additional financial support if you have children, or if you have a disability or a health condition. So the main message from tonight is don't worry about the finance. We can guide you through a guidance appointment and give you a lot more information in a separate session about how it works, but don't let the money put you off, is the main thing. And then can I get back to the final slide? No, I can't. Here we go. Okay, so this is the session that you're in, so you don't need to know about that because you've made it. Well done, and apologies that we had to cancel the in-person session on Saturday. I'm really glad so many of you have managed to join us tonight. It was unavoidable, but there will be other opportunities to come to the university. So later this month we're going to be having a Pathways to Higher Education for Adults event on the 28th of February. If you'd like to come in and find out about some other programs and generally kind of studying as an adult in higher education, there's an online version of that in March as well. There's John's student finance session, and we will also be doing another general drop-in in April where you can just pop in at any time during the day and chat to our student support staff, our guidance workers, as well as our tutors and students. So lots of opportunities to come onto campus and get a bit of a feel for the environment of the Lifelong Learning Centre as well. So have we got any more questions that people would like to pick up before we close the session this evening?
Thank you very much for everything.
Well, you're very welcome.
It's been very interesting.
Oh, pleasure. And thank you so much for everyone who's contributed and everyone that's been here. You know, it's such a privilege, you know, and it's just so lovely to meet you all. And, you know, any of the questions that you have, you know, you can just drop, because if you're anything like me, I'll be like, oh, why didn't I ask that? So, yeah. Oh, hi. Hello, that's just joined us.
It's lovely to see families and pets as well.
Hi.
This has been a really nice session. As Nadine says, thank you all for contributing. It makes it much more enjoyable and real and authentic for all of us. Best of luck to all of you in your next steps. And I know we'll see some of you either on Jumpstart or in future events over the next few months. So you know where the Lifelong Learning Centre is. We're here to support you. Stay in touch. If you have any questions at all, just come back to us. And best of luck with your next steps. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, guys. Have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody else that joins us. Lovely to see you guys.
Bye.
My cats are waving goodbye as well, but they're just stretching. So
My cat just rules me. Right. Have a good night, love. Thank you all.
Take care. Thank you
Bye.
so much. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
Take care. Look after yourself. Oh, we need to stop the recording.
Oh, yes. I don't know if I can. Can I stop the recording if I didn't start it?
Let's
Let's see. Record and
Stop
transcribe.
recording.
Recording. Got it.